But I mean, R.E.M. did have an unusual story going into this album. They stopped touring in 1990, which was like horrible, because as you said, R.E.M. basically shopped themselves around the country. We want to be this, we want to be that, and then all of a sudden, boom, we're not performing anymore. And
they had a lot of roadblocks along the way. They had a lot of speed bumps and stuff like that too. So I mean,
it wasn't easy. They recorded 2 albums called Out of Time and Automatic for the People. Now, Out of Time is memorable for Shiny Happy People and Losing My Religion. And Automatic for the People is probably famous for Man on the Moon and Everybody Hurts. I mean, there's other songs on there too, but those are the 2 main from each album, right? That everybody knows.
Yeah, the big ones, yeah.
And they wrote both albums as a way of dealing with the fact that they were now 30 or in their 30s. And the end of a band called The Replacements. Now, I'm going to hold my hands up. I've never heard of The Replacements. Is that something that you've come across? Because I know I haven't come across it.
I've heard the name, but I'm not familiar with the group personally. I keep wanting to think it's that band that Matt Sharp, the old bassist from Weezer, started, but I know that's wrong. I think it's anyways, but yeah, no, I'm not familiar with that per se. So. And
apparently they were like one of the band's biggest influences, right? And they released an album then in 1994 called Monster. Now, the thing about Monster was during the time between Automatic for the People and Monster, 2 of Michael Stipe's best friends had died. Kurt Cobain had been murdered by Courtney Love. And
allegedly.
No, I'm seriously joking. Kurt Cobain took his own life, unfortunately. But I always like to say that
officially,
just to get a response to see how long I can keep the straight face for. But Kurt Cobain took his own life, and River Phoenix had what is alleged a drug-induced seizure outside of a nightclub.
Yeah, overdose.
That he overdosed and never recovered.
Yeah.
These 2 guys were very, very, very close friends with Michael Stipe.
And they were also both very talented, very successful, and very young.
Yes.
They were both 27 years old, I believe.
Yeah, they're part of the 27 Club. So everybody thought that Monster, this rockier, louder, angrier album that R.E.M. did, was their mourning album. Michael Stipe got all of his mourning, all of his sadness out. And
that was just the anger.
Yeah. And there was a song called Let Me In that was recorded on this album that was recorded on a guitar that Kurt Cobain gave Michael Stipe.
Okay, wow, cool.
Now, my question to this is, can Michael Stipe play guitar left-handed, or do they have to restring it before they used it? But that's a different story for a different day.
Well, I'll throw this out there just for, just to put it out there. Kurt was known for using right-handed guitars and restringing them left-handed. Yeah, he did that all the time because he would get frustrated and smash his guitar, and then you'd have to build another one, put it together, or buy a pawn shop guitar. So most of the time, he would get a right-handed guitar, flip it over, restring it, readjust the bridge so it would play left-handed, and he'd play left-handed. Wow. So it could have been a right-handed guitar that he could actually be played. Who knows? But yeah, good question.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I knew like a lot of left-handed guitarists do that.
Yeah, but, well, I mean, out of convenience because there's right-handed guitars everywhere.
And the thing is, even though he disliked the fame, Kurt Cobain had enough money at that time to afford some of these, higher priced instruments, shall we say, whether he wanted the same sound or not. That's
he
why
he had his own signature series at that point.
Yeah, and that's why that's why it didn't click into my head that he might have gone to a pawn shop, got a right. You know what I mean? Because he still lived frugally, even though he was a multi millionaire.
Yeah, he kind of in the early days, in the Bleach days, like in their grassroots days, kind of like R.E.M. when they were, touring Europe in a van with like a bunch of stinky dudes that they barely knew. That's what would happen. There's times where the guitars got lost or broken or smashed. So he became very, very resourceful. He would Frankenstein guitars together and stuff. Like, got to make it happen, So
and guitars like that also sound better, I think.
More personality for sure, but so who knows? That it very well could have been a right-handed guitar. The way Kurt operated, he was very resourceful, to say the least.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. But the reason that's important is they went on tour for the first time in 4 years to tour the Monster album, and a lot of fans were excited. The band themselves were excited because they didn't want to do the Beatles route of we're never going touring again. They just needed some time off because they had been touring constantly since the early 80s.
Yeah.
And this was 1990 at this point. So 8 years of constant touring, we're going to take some time off, but we're going to still make music. Well, this tour did not go any way that the band wanted it to go. Now, the shows themselves were some of their best work up to that point. But the circumstances surrounding a lot of these gigs, Michael Stipe, Mike Mills, the bass player, and Bill Berry, the drummer, all ended up in hospital during this tour.
Yeah, it was some serious stuff too. I mean, I remember the Bill Berry, the aneurysm thing on I think Tabitha Soren dropped it first. That takes you back at all, people. But I remember all those hurdles that they encountered in that tour.
Yeah, and actually, Bill Berry after this album quit the band because at that point he was like, I really couldn't care less if I pick up a set of drumsticks ever again. And so he became a hay farmer. I mean, that's a heck of a career trajectory right there, to be drummer for one of the biggest bands in the world to hay farmer.
It can burn you out, man. And you know, I've got a friend who was in a very successful band, and I'll keep his name out of it. But anyways, they're a band that tours a lot all the time, and he just basically got tired of touring. And he's like, you know, I still love the music and I love the band, but I just don't want to tour anymore, you know? No. So he's still involved with the band and writing and producing and stuff like that, but he doesn't tour with them anymore. But, you know, it can, you know, 10 years of that for him and wore him out, man.
Yeah.
That's understandable. You know, 200 dates a year will wear you out. And that's what big time bands do.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things I'd love to have had that schedule, but I can't imagine that schedule. You know what I mean? It's, you know, it's really, really hard on you physically and mentally. And there are a lot of references to that in this album, which we'll get to here in a minute. But one thing about R.E.M. was they were like the kings of college radio, right? They were, you know, they were considered the college radio kings and everything like that. Well, on this tour for Monster, they kind of toured with the band that would take their place as the kings of college radio. They were touring with Radiohead. Yeah,
and that's insane to me that Radiohead opened for them.
I mean, a lot of big bands,
like now, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of big bands who open for bigger bands. You know, it's really, really weird. Like in '97, a lot of people, the metrics, and my own personal opinion, believe that Oasis were the biggest band in the world in '97. They were opening for U2.
Yeah,
I mean,
but U2 had been around so long. The Joshua Tree and that tour, that huge stadium tour they did in the '90s. I mean, they've been doing some pretty big stuff. But yeah, that's pretty crazy right there.
But Radiohead were recording at the time an album that recording a bunch of songs that became the Bends, right? And that's my favorite Radiohead album. I will say that right now. I love the Bends. I think it's fantastic. And what they were doing is they were jamming out the songs that would become the Bends. Right. And as they were jamming it out, they were recording it. Now, a lot of those recordings didn't make it to the Bends album, but some of the tracks did, if that makes sense. Like this guitar track might have made it, this drum track, you know. And the band picked up on that idea and were like, okay, we can do something like that. And then kind of on the tail end of this tour, they started, you know, writing lyrics, writing stuff. This has got a much more full sound because it's not just the four guys in the studio having to overlay stuff. This has got their touring pianist and their touring guitarist and their touring percussionist and everything in there. So they've kind of got extra ideas to bounce off. And it kind of, musically, this is probably the best album R.E.M. ever did.